Everyone was talking about Russia's sudden push near Pokrovsk. In just a few days, their forces grabbed almost 100 square kilometers, an advance far faster than anything we'd seen in months. On the surface, it looked like the kind of breakthrough that could shatter Ukraine's defenses and trigger a domino effect across the Donbass. Headlines painted the picture of a looming collapse, with Ukraine supposedly too short on manpower to plug the hole. Analysts were calling it one of the most dangerous moments of the war so far. But here's where things get strange. Instead of unraveling, Ukraine snapped back almost instantly. Within days, what looked like a disaster was flipped on its head. Russian troops that had surged forward suddenly found themselves cut off, surrounded, and in an unwinnable position. And that raises the real question: was this just luck? Or was the collapse never real to begin with? Was the whole breakthrough nothing more than bait in a trap that Ukraine had quietly been setting all along? According to a report in the Telegraph, Ukraine may have seen this coming from the very start. Thanks to its massive drone surveillance network, Kyiv allegedly tracked Russian units gathering in the area days before the push. Instead of blocking the advance, Ukraine let them roll forward, straight into a pocket. Then came the counterstrike. Elements of the Azov Brigade closed in, cutting the salient and leaving Russian forces trapped in what was essentially a giant kill zone. Kyiv later claimed that hundreds of soldiers were eliminated, along with dozens of vehicles. Now, here's the catch. The evidence is thin. The article itself doesn't reveal exactly how reporters knew this, and there's no way to independently verify it. It could all be part of Ukraine's information war, making a chaotic frontline battle look like a carefully scripted plan. Still, there's one thing that makes the trap theory hard to dismiss: the speed. Ukraine's turnaround was almost too quick for a force that was supposedly on the verge of collapse. And that makes you wonder, was the breakthrough ever real, or just bait for a much bigger move? But if this really was a setup, then Ukraine wasn't just playing with Russian troops. It was gambling with something much bigger. The Azov Brigade isn't just any unit. They're Ukraine's elite firefighters, the force you call when a defensive line is about to collapse. Their job is to race in, plug the hole, and hold the line no matter the cost. But this time, Azov wasn't just defending. They were sent in offensively, cutting off Russia's advance and turning the so-called breakthrough into a dead end. It worked brilliantly, at least this time. Here's the risk. When your firefighters are busy chasing one blaze, they can't stop another from flaring up. If Russia had launched a second push elsewhere, Ukraine could have been left exposed, without its most reliable unit ready to respond. That's what makes this so dangerous. Even if the trap was intentional, it wasn't risk-free. Kyiv was betting heavily that Russia wouldn't exploit another weak spot at the same time. And for once, the gamble paid off. But the real danger wasn't just about troops. It was about information, because in modern warfare, winning the intelligence game can matter more than winning the battle itself. For Ukraine to pull this off, it wasn't just about troops on the ground. It was about knowing exactly what Russia didn't know. Think about it. If Moscow had spotted Azov moving into position, the whole trap collapses. Russia could have simply held back, avoided the pocket, and left Ukraine's elite brigade stranded and wasted. Worse, they might have flipped the script, turning Ukraine's trap into a trap of their own. That's the razor's edge of modern intelligence. Both sides are drowning the battlefield in drones, sensors, and surveillance. Every move is watched. Every signal is tracked. To spring a trap under those conditions means Ukraine had to be confident, almost certain, that Russia was blind to what was coming. And this is where the war is heading. A deadly game of one-upmanship. Not just soldiers fighting soldiers, but deception layered on deception, each side trying to reverse the other's reverse card. Which brings us to the real question. Now that this happened once, how will Russia respond the next time they think they've found a gap in Ukraine's defenses? After Pokrovsk, Russia faces a new problem. Every gap they spot in Ukraine's lines could be a trap. Imagine this. Russian intelligence sees what looks like an opening and sends a few soldiers to probe. Nothing seems wrong, so reinforcements are called in. But what if Ukraine has forces hiding both around and on top of that position? Suddenly, what looked like an easy advance becomes a deadly snare. A single misstep could erase entire units before they even realize what happened. This is psychological warfare in its purest form. Hesitation becomes the enemy. Russian commanders now have to second-guess every move. And here's the twist. Ukraine may not have set the trap intentionally at all. It's possible they were caught off guard, and the Azov Brigade just managed to salvage a near disaster. Either way, the uncertainty works in Ukraine's favor. Every future attempt by Russia to push forward carries a heavier risk, and the fog of war grows thicker by the day. One of the biggest stories around Ukraine has been its manpower problem. For almost 2 years, the narrative has been simple. Ukraine doesn't have enough soldiers to hold the line, let alone launch counterattacks. But the Pokrovsk operation hints at something different. Somehow, Kyiv had enough forces to execute, or at least respond to, what looked like a potential catastrophe. The Azov Brigade wasn't stretched to the breaking point, and drone systems helped plug gaps that might have otherwise been exposed. Does this mean Ukraine's manpower issues are solved? Not exactly. But it does suggest they're not as dire as the headlines make them out to be. They've learned to stretch every resource and turn intelligence, mobility, and precision into a force multiplier. And that might explain why Russia hasn't managed other breakthroughs while all this was happening. Ukraine wasn't lucky. They were prepared, adaptive, and still had reserves in play when it counted most. Timing can change everything in war and in politics. The Pokrovsk operation wasn't happening in a vacuum. It coincided with the Anchorage summit between Putin and Trump, a moment when global attention was laser-focused on diplomacy. Had Ukraine's defenses truly collapsed, it could have shifted Trump's mediation stance or altered the summit's dynamics in ways Kyiv didn't want. Instead, the so-called trap may have been perfectly timed, showing just enough resilience to avoid political fallout while still inflicting losses on Russian forces. Even if the operation wasn't